Have you ever walked into a room and instantly felt something shift around you? Even though no one said a word and nothing obvious happened, yet somehow the atmosphere changed in a way that made you aware that something, or someone, had altered the entire dynamic without effort. No words were spoken, no dramatic movements were made, and yet there was a presence so subtle and so powerful that everyone in the space, whether consciously or not, began to react to it in ways they could not fully explain. Why does that happen in certain situations? And why do only a few people seem to create that effect without even trying? Why is it that some individuals command attention and influence the emotional tone of a room without speaking, while others struggle to be noticed, even when they are actively trying to express themselves? The answer is not what most people assume, because it goes far beyond traditional ideas of confidence, social skill, or even charisma, as it is commonly understood. It is not about being loud, outgoing, or visibly dominant, and it is not about performing in a way that draws obvious attention from others. It is something much deeper, something more internal, something that cannot be easily imitated or artificially constructed through surface-level behaviors. It is something rare, something that exists beneath words and beyond performance, and once you begin to recognize it, you start to see it everywhere. Because the truth is that the most powerful individuals in any environment are often the ones who say the least, yet somehow leave the strongest impression. They are not invisible, and they are not passive, but instead, they carry a quiet intensity that others can feel, even if they cannot articulate it. They have the ability to make people feel slightly uncomfortable, slightly exposed, and slightly unsure, without ever needing to speak. And understanding why that happens changes the way you see social interaction forever. Most people move through the world trying very hard to be liked, accepted, and validated by those around them, often without even realizing how much effort they are putting into it. They smile frequently, sometimes excessively, as a way to signal friendliness and approval, even when those smiles are not fully genuine. They nod constantly during conversations, reinforcing agreement, even when they are not entirely aligned with what is being said. They rush to fill every moment of silence with words, laughter, or reactions because silence feels uncomfortable and uncertain to them. Silence for most people feels dangerous because it removes the usual signals that reassure them, but everything is okay. Silence exposes insecurity, because without constant feedback and interaction, there is nothing to hide behind. So they try to escape it by filling it, covering it, and avoiding it at all costs. But rare individuals do something completely different, something that immediately sets them apart from everyone else in the room. They do not rush to speak, they do not feel the need to fill every gap, and they do not react impulsively to every moment. Instead, they allow silence to exist naturally, without trying to control it or escape from it, and that alone is enough to make others feel slightly uneasy, because it disrupts what people are used to. When you do not respond in the expected way, when you do not follow the usual social patterns, you break the invisible script that most people rely on. Think about how deeply we are conditioned to interpret signals in everyday interactions. A smile is usually interpreted as approval or friendliness, a nod is taken as agreement or understanding, and words are seen as the primary tool for connection. But what happens when those signals are missing, when someone does not provide the expected feedback that helps you feel secure? People begin to question themselves internally, often without even realizing it. They start wondering if they said something wrong, if they are being judged, or if the other person sees something they themselves cannot see. And in that moment of uncertainty, the dynamic begins to shift in a subtle but powerful way. Without trying, without forcing anything, the person who remains calm and unreadable gains influence over the interaction. Rare individuals do not chase validation from others, and because of that, they become unpredictable in a way that most people are not prepared for. And unpredictability creates discomfort, because the human mind is wired to seek patterns, predict outcomes, and maintain a sense of control. When someone cannot be easily read, when their reactions are not obvious or immediate, the brain struggles to categorize them. This triggers a subtle form of alertness, a heightened awareness that something is different and potentially important. That feeling of tension that arises in those moments is not exactly fear, but it is not comfort either. It is uncertainty, and uncertainty often leads to a form of respect before it leads to understanding. What makes this even more interesting is that these individuals are not intentionally trying to create this effect. or manipulate others. They are not playing a role, and they are not performing a strategy designed to intimidate or control. In many cases, they are not even aware of the impact they are having on the people around them. Because their presence does not come from external behavior, but from internal alignment. They are not divided within themselves, they are not constantly seeking approval, and they are not trying to prove their worth to anyone. And when someone has nothing to prove, they become incredibly difficult to influence or manipulate. That level of independence is rare, and anything that is rare naturally stands out in any environment. Even without words, even without effort, it becomes noticeable. Most people believe that communication is primarily about what is said, about the words that are used and the messages that are delivered. But in reality, communication operates on a much deeper level, one that is often overlooked. You can say all the right things and still come across as insincere or unconvincing, because something beneath the words does not align. At the same time, you can remain completely silent and still project a sense of authority, confidence, or intensity that others can feel. This happens because people do not just listen to words. They respond to energy, to presence, to the internal state of the person in front of them. Rare individuals have developed a strong awareness of their internal state, and they have learned to remain grounded regardless of the environment they are in. They are not constantly reacting to what is happening around them, and they do not allow the room to dictate how they feel or behave. Instead, the room begins to react to them, to their stillness, to their stability. They do not adjust themselves to fit into the environment, but rather exist fully as they are. And that creates a kind of pressure that others can feel, even if it is not aggressive or overt. It is a quiet pressure, a subtle weight that shifts the atmosphere in a way that is difficult to ignore. Imagine being in a conversation where you are speaking, explaining something, or trying to make a good impression, and the person in front of you is simply listening without interrupting. They are not rushing to respond, they are not forcing reactions, and they are not trying to guide the conversation. They maintain steady eye contact, their posture remains calm and composed, and their presence feels stable and grounded. At first, this might feel normal, even comfortable, but as the moment continues, something begins to change. The intensity of their attention becomes more noticeable, and the lack of distraction becomes more pronounced. Eventually, it starts to feel uncomfortable, not because they are doing anything wrong, but because you are being fully seen. There is no escape, no distraction, no surface-level interaction to hide behind, and most people are not used to that level of presence because they are accustomed to noise, to movement, to constant interaction. Rare individuals bring depth into interactions without needing to say anything, and that depth can feel confronting. It reveals things, it exposes subtle insecurities, and it removes the layers that people often use to protect themselves. The conversation becomes more than just an exchange of words. It becomes a reflection, a mirror that shows more than expected. And not everyone is comfortable looking into that mirror. That is why some people feel drawn to these individuals, feeling a sense of curiosity or intrigue that they cannot fully explain. At the same time, others may feel the urge to distance themselves, to leave the interaction, or to avoid prolonged exposure. It is not about liking or disliking, but about comfort and how much of it someone is willing to lose. The truth is that this kind of presence cannot be faked in a convincing way. Maintain eye contact, or control your movements, but people will sense whether it is genuine or forced. Because this is not about external behavior, it is about identity, about who someone is at their core. It is developed over time through experience, reflection, and a willingness to face internal challenges that many people avoid. Rare individuals have spent time alone, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. They have questioned themselves, confronted their doubts, and explored their insecurities instead of ignoring them. Rather than escaping discomfort, they have learned to sit with it, observe it, and understand it. Over time, this process creates a sense of stability, a groundedness that does not depend on external validation. They are not perfect, but they are centered, and that centeredness is what others feel. It is not about being superior, but about being internally aligned while others remain scattered. When you consider how most people communicate, it becomes clear why this difference is so impactful. Many individuals talk excessively, over-explain their thoughts, and try hard to be understood. They rely heavily on words, because they do not fully trust their own presence to carry meaning. They believe that more explanation will lead to more clarity, but often it leads to more noise. Words without presence lack weight, and without weight, they lose impact. Rare individuals understand that less can be more, that each word should carry intention and meaning. They do not waste energy on unnecessary expression, but instead focus on precision. Every pause, every look, every moment of silence becomes part of the communication. That level of control and intentionality can feel intimidating to others, because it is not chaotic or reactive. It is deliberate, and deliberateness creates a sense of power. If you shift your perspective and look inward, you might notice something interesting about your own reactions. Why do certain people make you feel slightly uncomfortable, even when they are not doing anything obviously wrong? Is it because of something they said, or because of what they did not say? Is it their behavior, or their stillness? In many cases, the discomfort comes from silence, from the absence of expected signals. Silence creates space, and that space forces you to confront your own thoughts and feelings. That is where discomfort begins, not because of the other person, but because of what arises within you. Rare individuals are not trying to dominate or control others, but they are also not trying to impress or gain approval. And when someone is not seeking your approval, it often triggers a subconscious response. You begin to seek theirs. The dynamic shifts, and without realizing it, you become more engaged, more expressive, more revealing. Meanwhile, they remain steady, present, and unaffected. This is influence in its purest form, not forced or strategic, but natural and effortless. If you consider applying this to your own life, it raises important questions about how you show up in different situations. What would change if you stopped trying so hard to be liked or understood? What would happen if you became comfortable with silence and did not feel the need to fill every moment? What if you trusted your presence more than your words? Initially, this might feel unfamiliar or even uncomfortable, because it goes against many learned behaviors. But over time, as you practice stillness and observation, something begins to shift internally. You become less reactive, less dependent on external validation, and more grounded in yourself. People begin to notice this difference, not because you are louder or more expressive, but because you carry yourself differently. In a world filled with constant noise and distraction, stillness stands out in a powerful way. It is important to understand that this is not about becoming cold, distant, or emotionally disconnected. It is about becoming authentic, real, and aligned with who you truly are. It is about removing the need to constantly explain, justify, or prove yourself to others. When you have a clear sense of who you are, the urge to seek validation diminishes naturally. That level of certainty is rare, and anything rare tends to have a strong impact. Even in silence, it communicates something powerful. The next time you enter a room, instead of focusing on how to be liked or accepted, consider a different approach. Ask yourself if you can remain still, if you can be fully present without performing or reacting unnecessarily. Ask yourself if you can exist in that space, without trying to control how others perceive you. Because that is where real influence begins. Not in what you say, but in what you no longer feel the need to say. Once you begin to understand this, you will start to recognize it in others as well. You will notice the individuals who do not chase attention, yet somehow attract it effortlessly. You will see the quiet ones, the observant ones, the ones who remain grounded regardless of the environment. They are not simply lucky or naturally gifted, they have developed a level of internal alignment that most people never reach. And that alignment communicates more than words ever could. So now the question becomes clear and unavoidable. Will you continue trying to be heard, constantly using words to gain attention and validation, or will you become someone who is felt, someone whose presence speaks even in silence? Because only one of those paths leads to true influence, and the choice between them is entirely yours.